What do a president named Millard, Chandler Bing, and the Dole pineapple guy have in common? They're all really into ships and conquering the Pacific Ocean. Okay, so it's clear that the US had imperialistic tendencies before our official age of imperialism began, but just in case you're not sure, let me prove it to you. Our desire to expand beyond our borders ramped up during the Industrial Revolution. The Civil War led to a boom in manufacturing, especially in the Northeast, and throughout the 1870s to the 1890s, US industry developed rapidly. As our nation grew in size and in economic strength, we began to flex our muscles internationally to establish ourselves as a desirable trading partner. And when people didn't want to be our trading partner, let's just say that we grew very persuasive. Beyond the political and military imperialism of the US Indian Wars and the indigenous reservation system, the US also began to practice economic imperialism. That is, our government used its growing power to influence countries around us to trade and make decisions that would benefit the US economy. In the 1850s, at the same time that the early conflicts with the Lakota were happening on the Great Plains, or the debate over slavery was ramping up on the eve of the Civil War, our eyes also were turning to Asia. In 1853, President Millard Fillmore sent a naval delegation into Tokyo Bay to try to establish trade between Japan and the West. And it was a tough sell because Japan hadn't traded with Westerners in about, 200 years or so? If you remember from season 1 of my podcast, while the US was establishing itself as a new nation, Japan was isolated under the Tokugawa Shogunate. Power was centralized under the military leader or shogun, with the emperor acting as a symbolic figurehead. Seeing the rise of Western powers, especially in Asia, Japan closed its doors to the outside world, kicked out Christian missionaries, and only traded with the Dutch, who were forced to sleep on their ships or on a separate island off of mainland Japan. So let's just say that the Japanese were wary of Western economies, and rightly so. But in 1853, Millard Fillmore was like, yeah, I think we can crack this nut. So he sent over Commodore Matthew Perry with a few ships. And I should note right now that if there was ever a movie about Commodore Matthew Perry, he legitimately could have been played by actor Matthew Perry. Like, he looks like an old Chandler Bing in a naval uniform. R.I.P. to both of them. Why were we focused on Japan? Well, for one, China was beginning to open itself up to trade, as in England was beginning to force China open to trade. And we wanted access and needed somewhere safe where we could stop and fuel our fancy new steamships. We had also just annexed California and the whole Mexican cession a few years earlier, and so it made geographic sense that we would begin to trade across the Pacific. So Matthew Perry went to Japan, officially to return shipwrecked Japanese sailors and request that American sailors stranded in Tokugawa, Japan be returned to the US. But he also showed up with a letter from the president addressed to the emperor. That was our first mistake. We clearly knew nothing about Japanese politics because the emperor has zero power. The letter really should have been sent to the shogun. It would be kind of like us trying to negotiate a political deal with England and sending a delegation to meet with Kate Middleton instead of the prime minister. And this letter is amazing. By amazing, I mean so passive-aggressive and gutsy that it's insane. It actually might be the most America historical document of all time. Essentially, the letter explained that the US would love to establish diplomatic relations and negotiate a trading agreement with Japan. And while we understand that Japan has been hesitant to trade in the past, we think it would be a really good idea for them to work with us. Oh yeah, and just in case they decide to deny our request, we very kindly sent something that should be useful along with this letter. A white flag. Literally, the US sent a white flag along with this letter to tell the Japanese, you're welcome to refuse to trade with us, but if you do, then you're gonna need this, because the US military is gonna destroy you. Oh right, because they said all of this with massive gunboats pointing at Tokyo Harbor. This is known as gunboat diplomacy, and it's both highly effective and wildly unpopular with the people on the other end of the guns. After Perry delivered his letter, he sailed around Asia, showing off the US Navy, and when he returned the following spring, the shogun had agreed to our demands. Woohoo! The two sides signed the Treaty of Kanagawa in 1854, giving the US most favored nation status and special trading privileges with Japan. It was a huge success, until a decade later when the entire Japanese government was overthrown, partly because of this. You see, The Japanese people were not super cool with the idea of the shogun signing a so-called unequal treaty with the US, so they threw their support behind the emperor and overthrew the shogunate. This so-called Meiji restoration is going to be the reason why Japan is going to rise up as an industrial and military power in the Pacific. It's possibly the greatest example of the US creating its own enemy. We'll come back to Japan in the 1930s. Now, around the same time that we were conspiring to force Japan open, we were also eyeing these beautiful islands in the Pacific called Hawaii. Get ready, I'm about to ruin all of your beautiful beach vacation photos. Because the only problem was that Hawaii was an independent kingdom. They were slowly being forced into unequal trading relationships by Britain and France, and the US was like, oh no you don't, not 2,500 miles from our shores. We talked to Hawaii and Europe and we brokered a deal. The US and Hawaii signed a treaty of friendship, and the US told Europe to stay out. Or more accurately, we told Europe that no nation should seek special privileges or try to colonize the islands of Hawaii. And then we started seeking special privileges and colonized the islands of Hawaii. The US began signing more and more trading agreements that gave US businesses special interests on the islands. And in exchange, Hawaii got direct access to US markets, which was especially lucrative for the growing sugar trade. By the 1870s, American plantations basically dominated the economy and politics of the Kingdom of Hawaii. In 1887, as the frontier is ending on the American continent and the Gilded Age and Jim Crow are raging back east, an elite class of white American business owners forced the King of Hawaii to sign the Bayonet Constitution. This limited the power of the Hawaiian monarch and gave commercial or trading privileges to the US. Why was it called the Bayonet Constitution? Oh, just because we basically forced the king to sign it under threat of violence. You know, the way that all great democratic experiments are born. This constitution, by the way, is also when we got control of Pearl Harbor to build up as a naval base. It's going to be very helpful for us sending ships across the Pacific to trade in Asia. Just trade, nothing else. Pearl Harbor won't be useful for anything else. A few years later, the king died, and Queen Liliuokalani took the throne. She had opposed this constitution from the beginning, so she was already unpopular with the American planters, and she immediately acted to restore her powers as queen. And the US sent in Marines to depose her and establish a provisional government. Turns out we've been doing that way before the Cold War. Who knew? A man named Sanford Dole was installed as the president of the new provisional government in Hawaii. And yes, Sanford Dole is in the Dole family and the Dole Food Company. Go to the grocery store and buy a pineapple. You'll see. Unfortunately, during that time, the US elected a new president, Grover Cleveland, and he was not down with imperialism. By the way, let's hear it for the era of amazing presidential first names, right? Millard, Grover, these are all incredible names for 19th century US presidents or your silly dog. So instead of backing down, Dole established the independent Republic of Hawaii and just waited Grover Cleveland out. He kind of took the Texas approach. Declare independence, form a republic, and then just wait for the US to annex you. And it worked, we did. Despite Queen Liliuokalani repeatedly visiting Washington, D.C. and petitioning for her reinstatement as monarch, the US eventually annexed Hawaii in 1898. The final straw was a tariff. Seriously, why is US history so full of tariffs? Under President McKinley, Congress passed a new tariff that would raise the price of foreign sugar. And this would have been catastrophic to the independent Republic of Hawaii. But that was exactly the point. Americans didn't want the price of sugar going up, and Hawaiians wanted to still have access to US markets. And one simple way to avoid the tariff was for Hawaii to not be foreign. Oh hey, fiscal loopholes. So Hawaii officially became a US territory in 1900 with Dole as its first governor. It would take almost 60 years for Hawaii to become a state, partly because we were distracted by world wars and such, but also because of racist attitudes that weren't sure whether the US could handle a predominantly non-white state. And this won't be the last time this comes up. Hold on, Puerto Rico, we're coming for you. Now, before I move on, I just want to make an ode to Queen Liliuokalani. Oh, Hawaiian Queen, you were the first woman to rule Hawaii. You were Hawaii's representative in London at the Crown Jubilee, meeting Queen Victoria herself. During the US coup, you surrendered to prevent bloodshed, but you never gave up your push for Hawaiian independence. You and your daughter eloquently asked Congress to respect your sovereignty, and you were ignored. You were even a musician, writing more than 160 songs and poems in your lifetime. Your most famous song, Aloha Oi, is now played for tourists drinking cocktails as your descendants dance in hula skirts, and for that I'm truly sorry. So now is the US officially an empire? Well, technically no, because we just established like a favorable trading relationship with Japan, and Hawaii does eventually become a state. So again, it's not officially imperialism. That's going to come also in 1898 with a full-on but very short war. To be continued. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and join patreon.com/antisocialstudies.